Whether you're moving from a monolith application into a set of microservices or starting out with a brand new microservices-based architecture, there's a few different angles of security you need to consider. First off, when all your logic is spread across different microservices, essentially your security logic, your authentication, authorization, identity pieces are now distributed. You need to make sure you have processes in place to make sure that you have that uniformity of how your policy is defined and applied across those services, which, don't forget, could be completely different languages and frameworks. You now need to worry about how service-to-service communication works. How does one service call another service in a secure manner? And then how do you avoid just passing massive tokens around? Very trusted golden tokens that maybe a service is given to call another service doesn't really work in a proper model. When it comes to protecting microservices, really need to think about how authentication and authorization are done as a foundational component. Both for end users authenticating to your system and then making calls into it, how those actions are authorized, but also how service-to-service calls work, things like mutual TLS or using a service mesh which handles that for you. What is the entry point to these microservices? Typical architecture of having an API gateway as the front door for external calls in is a great place to put some level of authorization and security in place. But really, if you start looking at the proper zero trust architectures, you need to make sure that each microservice in your architecture essentially is its own access control layer. It has its own way of defining and controlling who can do what inside of it. And that way you remove this idea of a secure perimeter, and each service itself can now actually go and properly enforce its permissions. But it needs to be done in a way that can be managed centrally and uniformly across your architecture. And Netflix has written a lot about how they did this. They externalized the authorization logic out, take a policy-based access control model to conditions and actions that can be done inside of the service, and then service calls are done via mutual TLS. So the certificates that are issued by the service mesh and the services call each other can be trusted that way. And then finally putting a single gateway in front of it. So all calls into the architecture are done through a single point where enforcement of things like security headers and authentication can be defined once and controlled once, and then passed down into the service mesh and into those services, which each in their own control and manage their security policy, authorization, and security logic within them. So these are the aspects you need to consider. There's a lot more around how you can go into detail for implementing these, and taking really a policy-based approach will bring you to a world where you have much more control and visibility, even in this distributed microservices stack.